Hello! This little video is going to be about solving for unknown and numbers. Unknown numbers are often things like variables, like this letter A in the variable is a variable. Remember, a variable is a number that replaces a letter. Those would be what would represent an unknown. I'm going to show you today the steps for solving unknowns. You can use this to add onto your cheat sheet for those of you doing a cheat sheet. We're going to start with the simplest form of solving for an unknown, which is a single variable equation that has an equal sign. Also, only whole numbers, no fractions. So the first step that you need to do is, this step is called finding the number with the variable. So this is always the first step when solving an unknown. You need to find those numbers on the same side as the variable. So in this one, we only have, this is the numbers that are on the same side, this A plus 2, those are on the same side as the variable, so I would say that they're with. So the numbers with the variable are this 2. It's important when you do numbers with the variable that you include the symbol in front of it. So like on this one, it has a plus sign. That plus sign tells us this 2 is positive. So the first thing you do, find the numbers with the variable. So the next step we do after we find the number with the variable is we're going to determine what operations the numbers are doing. So this, since there's only one number, this one is adding because it has a plus sign on it. So this one is adding. Step number 2 is kind of one that people sometimes forget, but it's important for step number 3. Now step 3 is another big one. Step 3, we're going to remove the numbers with the variable by doing the inverse, which is the opposite operation to both sides of the equal sign. So in step 2, we determined what operation it was doing, which is adding, and now we have to do the inverse operation, or the opposite. So remember, our opposite of adding is subtracting. So we need to subtract our number from both sides. So our number right now is 2. And it's adding, so we're subtracting 2 from both sides of the equal sign. We're doing it right under. This is a part where I get really picky. I want you to write the numbers underneath the numbers on both sides of the equal sign. So we need one on this side, and we need one on this side. So it needs to happen to both sides of that equal sign. That equal sign is that magic line. Now we can finish the problem and remove this. So this is gonna cancel. So we're left with A here. We're gonna drop this equal sign. 16 minus 2 is 14. All right, and then we cannot forget step 4. Then our final step to solving for an unknown is to repeat steps 1 through 3 until the variable is isolated, and the isolated means alone. So since the variable has no other numbers here, it can't even be a negative sign. No other numbers, no negative signs or anything, then this variable is isolated, so we know that A equals 14. If you want to be really fancy and check it, you can do substitution. So you're going to substitute with our original formula, so we're going to say A plus 2 equals 16. When A equals 14, substituting in, which means 14 is going in for A. 14 plus 2 equals 16. 14 and 2 is 16. 16 equals 16. So we have a correct answer on that. Let's try out the same steps with a little bit more complex problem. So we start out with our step number 1 again. So step number 1 is we're going to find our numbers with the variable. So this one has more than one number with the variable, or on the same side of the equal sign. We have a 1/3 and we have a 6. And this is a minus 6 or a negative 6. So there is 2 numbers with a variable. So we need to really think when we move on to the next step what we're going to remove first. Okay? Whoops. So moving on to our next steps, we need to now determine what operations the numbers are doing. The 1/3 is multiplying with the A, and the 6 is subtracting from the A. Moving on to step 3, we need to remove the numbers by doing from both sides of the equal sign by doing the inverse. But this time we have to really think about the numbers that we're using. So we have to add a little bit more to step 3. For these more complex variable situations, you have to add on to, and I would add this into your cheat sheet too, that you need to start with the numbers farthest from the variable. And what I mean by farthest is the one that's not directly connected to it. So if you look at, let's look at this one over here. Looking at this one, this 1/3 is connected right next to the A. So we have to first remove this -6. So right now it's subtracting. So to get rid of it, we add. So we're going to add 6 to each side. That's going to cancel. 42 plus 6 is going to be 48. On the canceling side, we're left with 1/3 and A. Drop that equal sign. All right. So we almost need to start back from step number 1 because we've done step 3. So moving on to the next step is step 4, where we have to repeat until the variable is isolated. The variable isn't isolated yet, so we know that we have this 1/3 here. The 1/3, when it's sitting next to the A, is multiplying the A. So to get rid of it, we divide. Okay, that's going to cancel. A equals. Remember when we divide fractions, we just multiply by their inverse. So I'm going to write it over here. Multiplying 3/1. So I have to take 48 times 3. So in this case, our answer is A equals 144. So it's very important in these more complex ones that you really look at step 3, because you need to start with the numbers farthest from the variable. All right, now it's your turn. I gave you some rather complex ones, so go ahead and pause the video. I want you to try these out, and then I want you to turn the video back on, and I'll show you how to do them. Okay? Make sure you're pausing this video. Are you pausing it? Okay, I hope you paused it. All right, so now let's go through and solve this. So the first thing that we're going to do when we solve it is we're going to find our numbers with our variable. We have a 3. We have a -10. So going to step 2. Step 2 is asking us to determine what the operations the numbers are doing. The 3 is multiplying with the x, and the -10 is subtracting. So step 3 is we're going to remove the numbers with the variable by doing the inverse or opposite operation to both sides of the equal sign. We're going to start with the number farthest from the variable. So our number farthest from the variable in this case is -10. Since it's subtracting, we're going to add 10, and we're adding it to both sides of the equal sign. It's going to cancel over here. We're going to drop our 3x. We're going to drop our equal sign. 10 plus 4 is 14. Sorry, I didn't line these up the greatest there, but you should, if you need to line them up on the side, you sure can. Add them like that. No shame in that. All right, now we have to go back to step 1 because we have not completely isolated our variable. So again, we're finding our numbers with our variable. We have a 3. So 3 and the x are multiplying. So to get rid of it, we divide. Divide each side by 3. Okay, it's going to cancel. X is going to be here. All right, this one is going to be a more complex division. So we're going to have to long divide. 14 divided by 3. 14 goes into 3. 5 is too much, so we have to use 4. It's going to be 12. Going to be 2. 2 is going to be left over. So remember on these, this is our whole number. This is our numerator. This is our denominator. So our whole number, our numerator, our denominator. So x is going to equal 4 and 2 thirds. All right, let's check our next one. The 4 times the difference of 6 minus some number equals 8. All right, we're going to find our numbers with a variable. We have a 4, we have a 6. We also have a number here because it's a negative sign. Remember, that's an implied -1. All right, so we're going to move on to step 2. We're multiplying with the 4, the 6. It's a positive 6, so the 6 is adding. And the -1 is multiplying the x. So those are the 3 operations that we have going on in this one. Going on to step 3, we're going to remove the numbers with the variable by doing the inverse or the opposite operations to both sides of the equal sign. We're going to start with the number farthest from the variable. Our 4 is our number farthest from the variable, and our 4 is multiplying. So to get rid of it, we divide. We're dividing each side by 4. Notice how when I put my symbols, I'm putting my -4. I'm putting this -4, or this dividing by 4 right under the 4. I'm putting this right on the answer. Make sure you're still holding on to those on both sides. Make sure you're drawing that line to make that equal line. That's showing me your steps. This one's going to cancel, so we're going to be left with parentheses 6 minus, let's keep that -1x there so we don't forget, equals 8 divided by 4 is 2. All right, again, we're going through the steps again. We have to find our numbers with our variables. We have this 6, we have this -1. Those are our numbers. The 6 is positive, it's adding, so to get rid of it, we subtract. We're subtracting 6 each side. Doing our equal line, that's going to cancel. We're left with -1x equals, we have a difference. So we have to, remember, we have to subtract this, which is 4. Take the sign of the larger, which is a negative sign. So we have a -4. Okay. Now we have to go back to step 1 again. We have to find our numbers with the variable. Our -1 is with the x. It's multiplying, so we have to divide by -1. Both sides of the equal sign. So that's going to cancel x, and that's just going to change our sign. So 4 is our answer here. See if you can find your errors if you made some mistakes. Those are some pretty complex ones. We'll do another page of try your own in just a second. Here's our second your turn. Go ahead and copy these into your notebook and give those a try. Then pause the video. Make sure you follow those steps. Follow the steps. All right, I hope you paused it because I'm gonna show you how to do it. Again, we're finding our numbers with our variables. This time we have a 2 and we have a -10. We're going to determine what operations the numbers are doing. The 2 and the a are multiplying. The -10 is dividing 2a. So we're going to remove the numbers with the variable by doing the inverse or the opposite operation to both sides of the equal sign. We're going to start with the number farthest from the variable. Our number farthest from the variable is a -10. And since -10 is dividing, we have to multiply by -10 both sides. Oh, I don't like using that x. I shouldn't use that x. Let me use the dot. Dot -10. I have to make it a big dot. Dot -10. That's going to cancel. We're going to be left with a 2a. Negative times a negative is a positive. 10 times 3 is 30. Okay. Now again, we're going back up to step 1. Find our numbers with the variable. We have a 2. The 2 is multiplying the a for step 2. To remove it, we're going to do the inverse of the operation. So the opposite of multiply is divide. So we're going to divide by 2. Divide by 2. That's going to cancel. We're left with a. A equals 15. All right, here's the next one. Step 1, finding our numbers with our variables. We have a -16. We have a 2. I want you to circle those. Always, always in step 1, circle so you don't forget. Okay, determine what operations they're doing. -16 is subtracting from x. or subtracting in this symbol. The 2 is dividing. We need to, for step 3, we're going to remove the numbers with the variable by doing the inverse operation to both sides of the equal sign, and we're going to start with the number furthest from the variable. Our furthest from the variable number is 2. Okay, to get rid of that, it's dividing, so we have to multiply by 2 both sides. Oh, I don't know why I keep making that X for multiply. You need to make it a habit to make a dot. 2, 2. It's going to cancel the 2 here. We're going to be left with 16 plus X equals 24. Okay, then we have to go back up to step 1. We're going to find our numbers with the variable. It's negative 16. What operations is it doing? Well, it's subtracting. Don't get confused because there's a plus sign behind it. The plus sign is just saying that the X is positive in this case. So we're going to add 16 to do the inverse. Left with X equals 38. Those would be your answers. Thank you for joining me in this video. This is what I need to see in your cheat sheet, so make sure that gets on your cheat sheet for those of you working on the cheat sheet.